Assistant Director for Housing and Environment. Morning, Lee Healy, Corporate Director, Place and Economy.
Morning, Chair. Yeah, Mike Bush, portfolio holder for Environment.
Thank you. And I believe we have Steve from BDO as well. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve Bladen, Director at BDO.
Thank you. Okay, start with the agenda. Apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have received no apologies for this meeting this morning or substitutions, though I note that Councillor Leonard is absent today.
And minutes of the last meeting. Anyone seconding?
Chairman, before I second, I'd just like to thank everybody involved here in the Audit Committee and officers, including our committee services, in the way that we've looked at those minutes, and made necessary adjustments, and also included the YouTube recording. I think that's a benefit to strengthen this committee and anybody that is interested down the line in finding out what we discussed. So thank you, and happy to second.
Go ahead, Councillor Fairley.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd like to agree with Councillor Platt on the effort that has gone in advance. So thank you all for that. Within the process, it becomes apparent actually when you go onto our website and you're looking online at historic meetings and minutes and such like, that actually you had to go elsewhere to get to the live recordings. I wonder whether that could be something that perhaps we would propose to, perhaps it's the Constitution Working Party, that perhaps a hyperlink could be included where the minutes are within the website generally. Perhaps that's something that we could look at proposing, and actually whether there is also any changes required in the Constitution in terms of, you know, how long we need to keep minutes for, or how long recordings are kept for, so that it could be sort of made full circle.
Thank you.
Chairman, could I respond to that? Thank you. Yes, as well as putting the Audit Committee live stream recording on the relevant page on the website, my colleague Keith Durran yesterday backdated all the live recordings to the annual meeting in May. So for all the meetings from the start of this municipal year, the live stream recordings are now on the relevant committee page on the website as well. And in respect of how long we keep the live stream recordings, it's set out in the Constitution that we keep them for 2 years.
Okay. Ian.
Thank you. Mine's a wider point, actually, and I want to thank the Audit Committee, because we are seeing a range of different authorities with different issues. And if every time you read the reports, and sad that I am, I tend to do so because of the importance of it, in terms of the high profile and sometimes the not so high profile issues for local authorities, one of the key things 99 times out of 100 will be a lack of transparency, a lack of governance issues, a lack of actually asking the questions and of work of doing that. And so whether it be making sure that people are aware of the discussions you had, and we should never verbatim do that because everybody would want to have everything they said listed, but actually when there are some key things such as you were discussing, and on other items, and I'm not just talking about that particular item, but I'll use that as an example, it is important that the Audit Committee both does that job and is seen to do that job, because that is where you will have us in a very different position than some authorities, whereby one of the key things which has been the issues have been that they've got into those issues is partly is around that lack of transparency, the lack of the Audit Committee. And that doesn't just go in public services, that also translates into the private sector, which I was in before. And again, if the Audit Committee is not effective, then that's where you run into a lot of problems. So I want to thank you for the work you do and the role that you do, which I think is absolutely key. and B, actually the way in which you've managed to highlight the issues and find a way of highlighting that as part of this role, because I just think that is so important, never more so than now. So thank you.
Thank you. And yes, I have to agree with you on transparency. That's very, very important. Yeah, and we'll move on to declarations of interest.
Sorry, Madam Chairman, before we move on from the minutes, there were a couple of suggestions that Lisa Hastings put forward yesterday. They need to be formally incorporated in the minutes if members so wish. Otherwise, that you'll agree in the minutes as they are printed in the agenda. So if I could just outline the two items that Lisa mentioned. The first one would be on the top of page 15 of your agenda. If you want to turn to that. And the Council's Monitoring Officer, Lisa Hastings, is suggesting that, yes, it could be slight alteration. So it was, say, during the course of this item, Steve Bladen dropped out a remote call and and it will say, and did not rejoin, rather than was unable to return. The other suggestion is on page 14, a sentence to be inserted between the paragraph with bullet points that starts, however, BDO, and then the following paragraph, members ask BDO. So between those two paragraphs, a sentence to be inserted that would read, bear with me a moment, Madam Chairman. Officers confirmed that they were not aware of any outstanding requests by the external auditor. So it's up to members to decide whether they're agreeable to those two additions being made to the minutes or not.
Sure, Councillor Fairley.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, and thank you for that, Ian. Yes, that's exactly. I'm happy with the minutes like that, so would propose that if everybody's.
Everyone happy with that? Okay, good. So we'll move on to declarations of interest. There are none. Questions on notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38? Nothing there. Okay, we're going to go to item 7, report of the Assistant Director, Finance and IT, A3, table of outstanding issues. That's pages 57 to 70.
At this point, are you happy to, because on there's an update from the external auditor within that report. If you're happy, we go over to Steve and provide an update on the 2021 and 21-22 accounts. Be helpful. Thank you.
Yes, we're happy with that. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I'll just give you a very brief update and then obviously happy to take any questions. Unfortunately, the report that we brought to the last committee that set out the work that we still had left to complete on our audit, unfortunately, we have not been able to move that audit on any further. So the outstanding matters or the work to complete that we listed in that previous report remains the same. Unfortunately, we're still continuing to see resource pressures and challenges, and unfortunately some of the NHS audits that we started earlier this year have not been completed, and so we have not been able to progress your audit any further. In terms of how we've prioritised our work, we have been in discussion with a number of interested stakeholders, so that includes the Department for Levelling Up Homes and Communities, The NHS, obviously, PSAA and the FRC, and we've taken all views into account in arriving at how we've prioritised those audits. But as I say, we have not been able to progress your audit any further, and I appreciate that members will be disappointed with that. In terms of we did say in our report to the last committee that we expected to be able to move that audit on further during October, so this month. Again, I suspect that will not happen. I suspect it will be later this year until we're able to resume that work. But it is just a question of those prioritisation of audits and where we are with that. I'm not sure that there's much more I can add to what I've already said in terms of the audit itself. Members will be, I'm sure members will be aware that there is a number of, or there is work going on within the local government sector to come up with a solution to the significant number of audits that are not yet signed within the local government sector. So that's not just within BDO's own portfolio, that's across the whole of the local government sector. So the NAO, following the Minister Lee Rowley's letter to local authority chief executives back in July, the NAO are leading on how that is brought into place, or the proposals in that letter are brought into place. So the NAO have set up a number of programme board and a number of supporting committees that are considering relevant issues to that, and BDO are feeding into those discussions. But I think it's fair to say that we're still some way from getting some firm proposals on just how the backstop dates that were set out in that letter can be brought in, and I think it might be some time before we see those. It's my own view, having attended some of those meetings. But I'm happy to try and answer any questions members might have, either on the progress of our audit or on that wider work more generally.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, my question would be that are you aiming at reaching a closure to these outstanding accounts? Like, do you have anything in mind? I do understand that you've been given extensions, but yeah, for closure's sake, are you aiming at any such date in yourselves?
So yes. So we expect to come back to resume our 2021 audit later this year, and take that audit through to completion and issue an audit opinion on your financial statements. So that is our intention to do that. There's nothing in the proposals that the government has published at the moment. There is nothing within those that would stop us from doing that. So yes, it is our intention to conclude that audit.
Okay, thank you. Ian.
Thank you. First of all, to say hugely disappointed, obviously, to hear that, because obviously we were only talking earlier around the importance of the audit committee of the accounts, and we see local authorities getting into difficulties, and partly in getting into difficulties, that is because, of course, that they know what their position is, and it is very difficult for our members to have that surety if they don't get the sign off from yourselves. A couple of questions on that is my understanding is, Steve, is that it's actually BDO is holding on off of local government in order to do health accounts at this stage, and therefore you are then to a certain extent predicated on your timelines for health rather than actually coming back to us. Is that the case? And the second one is that in response to the government proposals, and obviously the LGA are making submissions, as are the DCN, as is SIPFA, around the government proposals whereby basically with drawing a line, yes, but then qualifying councils just because you're drawing a line. And what's BDO's position on that in response to government?
So in terms of the first question, the answer is, I think, is yes. We have prioritised completion of our NHS audits before returning to some of those outstanding local government audits. So we expect those NHS audits to be completed this month, and then at that stage we will return to completing our local government audits, which will include obviously tendering's 2021 audit. The proposals as we currently see them envisage a number of backstop dates. I think the first of those backstop dates is the 31st of December 23, but that relates to accounts ending 2019-20 and earlier, so that doesn't really impact on tendering council. The next backstop date, as I understand it, is the 31st of March 24, and that is where auditors are, or as the proposals currently stand, is where auditors are expected to have completed 2021 audits and 21-22 audits. And at this stage, those proposals say auditors should either issue a full audit opinion, giving us as much a full audit assurance if those accounts are unqualified, so that would be a true and fair view, or as much assurance as they are able to. So that might, in some instances, include qualifications where auditors haven't completed their work in certain areas, or it could include a disclaimer where work on a certain set of accounts hasn't even been started and therefore can't be finished by that backstop date. In terms of BDO's view on that, is we think there are difficulties in doing that under auditing standards. So we are, at the moment, we are required to audit under international standards on auditing, and that's, so it makes it difficult to just qualify a set of accounts because you've in effect run out of time. But that's the nature of the discussions that are ongoing with the NAO, Financial Reporting Council, and indeed all of the other bodies, firms of auditors that currently undertake local government work. So I think while I appreciate the letter came out from Minister Rowley back in July, I think there's still some work to do before we have a firm set of proposals that we can work to.
Councillor Platt.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Steve. Good to see you. Good to see that technology is working your end this morning. Have you managed to clear up a number of the queries that we had at our last meeting regarding information that you pertained that you hadn't received from our officers, and yet our officers were at a different view?
So if I... Sorry, Chair, I'll pick that question up? So I think there was probably a couple of areas that was in reference to. So one of the areas of our audit where we haven't currently completed our work is around inputs into the valuation of other land and buildings. And specifically there, what we were looking for was evidence around the size of those buildings, because that has an input or an impact on the valuation of those. So what we were looking for was site plans that were provided to the valuers. Now, for the 2021 audit, we don't have the site plans that were provided to the valuers. What we do have is site plans that were provided to the valuers for the 2019-20 audit, or the valuations that took place in 2019-20, and for valuations that have taken place in 2021-22. So what we will do is we will have to do some work around those two sets of plans. to gain assurance over the size of those buildings in 2021. So what that might mean doing is looking to see whether or not there's been any changes between the 2 years that we do have, and perhaps doing some testing around additions and disposals to provide us with evidence of whether or not there is likely to have been any changes to the size of those buildings. Now, it could be that we've already done that additions and disposals testing. I suspect we probably have, but that's the work that we need to do, is just determine how much assurance we have using site plans from the prior year and from the subsequent year, because as I understand it, we don't have them from the year that we're on, that is currently under audit. In terms of infrastructure assets, I know we did touch on this at the previous meeting. So what we were looking for is some evidence of the estimated useful life of the coastal defences. So we do have a letter from an external third party, and that has been supplemented by some sensitivity analysis that the council has done that looks at, if you change the life of the assets by a certain number of years, what impact does that have on the value of that? What we need to do is complete our work around that. So that will mean contacting the person who has provided the assurance around the estimated life of those assets, and establishing whether or not they can be relied on, so whether they are an expert, and also looking at the sensitivity analysis that the council has provided.
Chairman, can I just ask our colleague, the 151 officer, if he's agrees with what Steve has just told us?
I think the discussions we've had is that the information, as we said in the minutes, we've provided information that we understand is required, and we'll wait to hear back from Steve once they've done that piece of work. But as far as we're concerned, the information we've got is all we can provide. So as Steve said, what assurance can they take from that information that's they've already held? So there's no activities going on behind the scenes to provide anything else. It is literally what we've got and provided. Can assurance be obtained from that piece of work? Hopefully the answer is yes.
Thank you very much. So Steve, reference to the buildings, your first point, you've got the information. So where's the hold up there?
Well, that comes back to the point that I was making earlier, in that we just haven't had time to consider that yet.
So you just not had the time to consider it because you're working on the NHS audit.
Yep, that's right.
Right. Okay. Were you able to pick up the query that my colleague had? He's not with us today, but Councillor Leonard brought up a number of queries with your colleague after you dropped off the call. Have you been able to pick those up? Because I'm sure Councillor Leonard would be very keen to learn what the answers were, even though he's not here. Your colleague did say that she would pass them on to you.
So my understanding is the questions were around the sea defences. So there was something around can we estimate the number of councils with sea defences? So my answer to that is that within BDO's portfolio of local authority audits, we only have one with coastal sea defences. I'm sure there are a number that will have them, but in terms of our portfolio, we just have one. There were some questions around the estimated useful life of assets at Essex County Council and the Environment Agency. I think, to be honest, the assets that the council hold are unique to the council, and I'm not convinced that looking at the lives that they might have on other infrastructure assets at Essex County Council or the Environment Agency at this stage would provide us any assurance. What we would seek to do is rely on the council's expert. I think we've in terms of whether or not the council has provided all of the information that we've asked for on infrastructure assets. At this stage, yes, they have. So we just need to work through what the council has now provided. And I'm not sure, I don't think there was any other questions, but I'm obviously happy to, sorry, there was one other question, which was about how long it will take us to complete the audit work. So what we would be, my estimate of what we've got left to complete is around 2 to 3 weeks in order to complete all of our outstanding work.
Ian.
Apologies, I've lost the sound.
Mic on. Okay, Steve, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. So just to reiterate my comment, I've heard those kind of comments from BDO before. We've only got X amount of work to do, etc., etc. And I have absolutely no confidence, especially in the fact you mentioned earlier that you'll be coming back to us later this year. I'm sorry, but we're way past that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that one of the key things is that rather than keep talking about what are we waiting for or what are we outstanding, one of the key things is if you can't do the work, whatever you think you're waiting for and we've given you and therefore you've not been able to look at it, is more about you're not able to return to us to do the work at this stage, which you've said yourself, Steve, to be fair to you, and I appreciate that. And that's why I asked the question of health. I do know that in some of your health ones, because I'm actually in touch with one of the health ones, which is actually within your frame, your area as well, not yours personally, the team, there's also delays there in the health one. So the issues around are you going to be able to get the health there and then come back to us? I think that we've got to be realistic and say is that that's an issue. What I don't want to do is get into some kind of blame game. It says you're being held up because you're waiting for information, but then actually the whole thing is you can't get back to us because as BDO have made the strategic decision to stop doing local government and go and do health, and I think that we need to just recognise that.
Councillor Steady.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm confused. And we're hearing all and we're reading reports, and I just think maybe we need to be a bit more radical. We need to know exactly where we are. We can't keep going backwards and forwards all the time. We need to know as it is, and I think we need to do that as a matter of urgency, to be quite honest with you, because obviously it is urgent.
Did you want to come on to that, Steve?
In terms of the work that we've completed so far on the council's financial statements, we don't have anything significant to bring to members' attention. As I've said, we set out in previous reports what we've got left to look at, and so the key areas there are around the valuation of other land and buildings and infrastructure assets. That work isn't complete, so I can't say at this stage what will come out of that. But in terms of the other work that we've completed on other areas of the financial statements, we don't have anything significant to bring to your attention. In terms of later years, so 21, 22, and 22, 23, then clearly we haven't started work on those accounts. So I'm unable to give you any assurance over those at this stage.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm still confused. Sorry, I don't know. I can't grasp it. I might be the lowest denominator here, but
Sure, go ahead, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I think one of the key things is we recognise and this is moving away from Steve and the kind of the individuals for tendering at the moment. Audit in this country for local government is in a real state. And we have got a whole range of issues, and we're seeing significant increases in our fees for next year because of about that catch up about audit companies being able to resource, being able to have sufficient resources in order to do the audits. Members quite rightly saying, well, what about 21, 22, 22, 23? We're talking today about 2021. I can't remember what I did then, to be honest with you. So it's quite difficult sometimes to get asked the question is, why did you do such and such back in, a date in that time, which makes it all the harder and all the longer. The issue for our staff, though, and for our finance staff and for our audit staff is, of course, is that we keep going having to visit a long-term bag, which then draws out resources for us, then draws out our capacity. So there is an ongoing effect. And I know Neil Harris, I know, Steve, you know Neil Harris, and as you know as well as I do from previous, there is a whole conversation with Neil's new role to look at how that changes. I think there isn't an answer to what you're asking, Councillor, if I'm honest, because 21, 22, 22, 23 are not even being looked at. What we can give you is assurance, and what we can show is that this council is very transparent in terms of our figures. We give regular updates. When we think there's an over or an underspend, we tell you, and we share it with you. We share the pain with you as well as with the love, and we get either way. And I say that with tongue in cheek, obviously. But seriously, that's there. Where this is failing and where it is falling down across the country in terms of local government and in terms of certain other public sector areas is the fact that actually it's highlighting where we are seeing councils which are having the issues, the 114 notices and other issues, and that is because in part that obviously that's not there. It is obviously the organisation's responsibility anyway, and how they manage their finances and their approach. But obviously, respective auditors are key. So I don't think there is an answer to what you're saying, and I completely understand that frustration. And our frustration is it ties up our staff on it as well, because they are still revisiting and going back over time. And I have an element of sympathy with Steve because he's coming here, and BDO have made the decision to go to help. So we know that they can't come and respond to what we've sent through. We will continue to. We said that I would write to them. We've held off doing that until we know what the response is. We will now do that, and obviously I will circulate that. But I have a huge element of frustration, as you can see. That's why I'm here today. But also, it is the wider national picture, which so many authorities and the system is trying to fix. And I could go back to that. This actually goes back to probably 2010, 2012, as to why the lag has now hit us now. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Steve. I understand if you don't.
I don't think I've got anything I can add to that, Ian. I think that in terms of assurances that you currently have over the council's later financial statements, obviously the council section 151 officer is required to certify that those accounts give a true and fair view. But obviously I do understand that what you're also looking for is that external assurance over that, and you don't have that this stage. But in terms of the backlogs that Ian spoke to, I don't really have anything I can add to that.
Councillor Fairley. Yes.
Just to clarify one other piece of information in terms of giving that members that surety. Apologies, Councillor Fairley, for jumping in there. Is also that I signed the annual governance statement, which is put together, and that has responsibilities from within the Section 151 officer, the monitoring officer, the leader of the council also signs that. And rest assured, it's not just another piece of paper which I happen to sign as it comes on my desk each year. And it's something which is a, as far as we're concerned, is a really important document. And for you as members, in reading that, it's my bulletin, you have to read it. So. In terms of reading that, one of the key things in there is it does actually go into some of the details around the risks and some of those changes, etc., and highlight some of that. And I think that's there's some key issues around there. And finally, the other thing which you get here as members is, and I know it's not the accounts one, and as audit committee, you're absolutely right to ask that question. but also in terms of some of the soft stuff. So the bulletins and things, and the all member briefings is about telling you everything. I was having a conversation last night with 2 authorities down in the south, and they are not sharing the information with each other. So they don't even have that level of communication to give themselves some kind of soft surety. It's not the final surety which our auditors give, but it's soft surety. So I do want to give some assurance, but I still am equally frustrated because I would like to get the sign off as well. Apologies, Councillor Fair.
Thank you, Chairman. And yeah, thank you, Steve. And I do appreciate all of the information that we are hearing, and we understand that it's a national issue and so forth. So a couple of points. The first being, if I just feed off what Ian was just saying there, whatever level our staff and whatever assurance we get, external audit is there to provide, if you like, that extra reassurance for those staff. And I'm sure that, you know, Richard would very much appreciate being able to have that external assurance. We are answerable to our residents and to give them that assurance. And I think what's going on that they see happening within the media and other councils, I think they will be, you know, quite scared that there's going to be big increases in costs, that their council isn't perhaps as stable as they would like it to be. So off of that, perhaps I could propose that we request that maybe the cabinet member could make a statement or consider a statement for the next full council meeting in relation to it. I think that would give reassurance to residents as much as we're getting that reassurance. And the other thing is that I would say is, you know, although it's a national picture, there are some very specific issues, obviously, that are tendering related. Within the questions that Councillor Leonard asked last time, there was this, you know, what experience qualifications would BDO expect from the person drafting the letter of evidence in relation to the coastal defences item to facilitate the audit? And what I see is, you know, we're providing information, and Steve, you're then saying, okay, we don't have time to look at it, but then there's no assurance that you're not going to then look at it further down the line and still come back with further questions, whereas a specific question was asked last time. Did you come back and actually give an answer on that specific question, or are we just left hanging until such time further down the line and you're going to come back again and say, oh, actually, yeah, no, we do need further information? So I think, you know, there are points there that we probably just need to clarify. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Steve. Did you want to comment on that, please?
I'll try and comment on those points. I do understand the point that's made about members and residents seeking external assurance on the statement of accounts. I do understand that point, and I do understand that you don't yet have that for the reasons that we've discussed. In terms of I think there was a question around the work that we will need to do in relation to the person that's given assurances over the life of the coastal defences. So specifically what we will be doing in relation to that is we will need to make an assessment of a number of things. So firstly, looking at their independence from the council. So are they be able to give an independent view? So independent of those people that are preparing the financial statements. We will be looking at whether or not they have the necessary skills and experience to give a view on that estimated useful life. So that will look at things like, for example, their qualifications, whether or not they're affiliated to a professional body. And an example might be some kind of engineering professional body. The experience that they've got in able to give a view as to whether those coastal defences will last for the life that the council has estimated. And then we just need to understand any assumptions that have gone into making that estimate of the useful life and what they're based on. So the way that we would do that is we would expect to write to the person who has given that view, asking some of those questions, and then it may be that we follow that up with a further conversation with them, or seek some external support for some of the assumptions that have gone into that. But it's difficult to be much more precise than that at this stage until we've done that work, but that's the areas that we would be looking at.
Thank you for your response, but yeah, equally frustrated, and that's, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Richard.
Only a couple of things really, and I think what you said there, Councillor Felly, is that in terms of the stem of accounts, yeah, that's important, but equally as important is our financial standing, opinion on our financial standing, our financial resilience, which we've not had since 2020. Last report was 2020, so it is important we do get that, because the longer it goes on, it gets more tricky to explain that. I think it's also be really positive as well. Is what's so frustrating is that we're so close. We're so close, aren't we, to getting over the line? It's two things outstanding. There's some authorities that have got a lot outstanding. And I think it's really kind of a naive and pragmatic request, is when you return back to local authority audits, please, I know everyone's going to say this to you, Steve, is please, can you prioritise tendering district council, because we're so close. I don't think it'd take much to go over the line, and then we can sort of move on to later years. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Any more questions? Okay, thanks, Steve. I think that's it for today then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is it okay if I drop off, Chair, or did you want me to stay for anything further?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye. We'll carry on with your report. Oh.
Just before we move on, just wanted to ask Richard whether he sees this situation at some point, if it hasn't happened already, affecting the council's credit rating.
Richard, did you want to come on that?
Short answer, no. I don't think it will. I don't think it will. Sorry, and you're gonna say no.
Thanks.
In terms of some of the national context of that, is that the short answer, as Richard rightly says, no. I think that's partly because of our debt levels. We don't have debt levels. We don't have the same sort of issues which others are there, and they haven't got the surety of that. Obviously, those authorities where they're either coming towards having Section 114s or have Section 114s, I think that may be a different story. But I don't sit there. I think what worries me, if I'm honest, and I know we're live, so I'm saying this measured, and I know that for Richard looks at me worrying that what I'm going to say in public, not forget, I know we're in public. I think what worries me is that sometimes the questions, I am concerned that they're not things which will hold up delivery of it. When are they ponderable questions, or are they answerable questions? And if I can give you an example, is that, as Mr. Bladen said on there, is that they've got the 1920, they've got the 2122 of the size of the buildings. It's 2 minutes to look and see what the difference is, and actually what we're using or not using, and so which building is that? And I can tell you now which ones they are, and what we've gone in and out of, and the square footage, etc. In terms of the sea defences issue is one which, again, is we put in a provision of a 10-year recharge. Obviously, it hasn't happened. They have been successful. The sea does variable things. If we ever, you know better than me on some of the surge and some of the tides and the things which we've had. So those sorts of things being a ponderable around as an audit issue. I hope they are taking in the spirit of, as Richard quite rightly said, let's just get them over the line because they're close, and they're not reasons why to hold us up.
Short answer is that I think what you talked about transparent earlier on, and I think it's really important, because I think for me, if I'm in a discussion with someone, so we haven't had your account signed off yet, is we have had an interim report that's been in the public domain. And I think it was quite helpful because it actually did itemise what we're talking about. So anyone looking at the council, we don't have a formal credit rating as such, but reputationally would be the problem. Is if anyone actually had said, look, you haven't had your account signed off yet, we've got all the stuff in the public domain. They can see exactly what the issues are that we've got for 2021, not 21-22 yet, because that's not been looked at. And people can make their own minds up, and I think they would, because actually we're stuck on those two issues, aren't we, about valuing our buildings, and we don't borrow against the value of our buildings like private sector do, and we've got the issue with the coastal protection assets. So it shouldn't have an impact going forward with what I call a professional proper discussion with whoever was relying upon our accounts. So that's in the public domain. An interim position was in the public domain, and everyone should be aware of what those outstanding issues are, and they wouldn't be the things that you'd see in councils that are going, in difficulty, because they would have, other issues that would get raised. I must keep coming back to what's most important for me is that use resources commentary, because that talks about the council's financial standing, our financial planning, and everything else. That's what's missing. We've not had that formal report since 2020. For me, if I'm being really honest, that's the one I'd like to see now. The accounts are a little bit mechanical, and they do appoint, and they do provide a huge level of assurance about what we're doing right. But that commentary on the council's position of financial standing is so important. And the conversation I've had is that's what we want to see. What I didn't want to see is the accounts signed off, and we've got to wait another 3 months for that. Because I think that's got to come together. That's the bit that we really want to see and digest. Because as I said, with Craig, your team look at that independently, but we do need that external view on that really quite quickly. Really quite quickly.
Thank you, Richard. Given Minister Rowley's solution or proposed solution to this problem, do you see that December 24, us having limited assurance going forward from BDO, and that's the end of it?
If I'm being brutally honest, I think it wasn't. I mean, the government's intention, what they're doing to bring about the end to the audit delays. Okay, welcome. But I was personally frustrated with the backstop dates, because as we heard from Steve, there was no. The government have suggested in the FRC about prioritising the latest set of accounts for the reasons we've just discussed. The latest set of accounts is really important. What we don't want auditors to do is to trundle along looking at the 21-22 with great vigour, and then it jeopardises a 22-23 position, because I think it's almost at the worst case scenario, isn't it? We do a lot of work, or the auditors do a lot of work on the 21-21 position. They don't get assurance. We get qualified. And we've got to pay for that piece of work as well. So you can't think of a worst case scenario, can you, in that regard? So I think what we'll be doing, and hopefully this, from this meeting now, is we do get a sense from BDO formally of how they are responding. Stephen Fennis, he described the government's proposals. He didn't really describe BDO's response to it. And that's not a criticism, because I think it's in a difficult position to do that. That's been discussed at the moment. But I think we do need to draw that out. What are BDO's response to those, and are they going to prioritise 22-23? They might say they're not going to prioritise 22-23. Okay, that's where they're going to arrive at. But I think we do need that little bit of clarity around what is their response on a practical level, and how they're going to take it forward, given those backstop dates, which might change because it's going through consultation and discussion at the moment. But I think that commitment from BDO of where they are with the 22-23 position, given they have been encouraged by the government and the FRC that's what they should be looking at, I think we need to draw that out formally with them.
So is that something you'd be bringing back to us in January, do you think?
Yeah, we need to get that. Yeah, we can correspond with BDO, and we'll see if they're happy to answer it. They might not be prepared to answer that question, but we can certainly ask it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the whole reason why I asked for closure, and hopefully we can get that, hopefully by the end of the year or beginning of next year. I think we're going to Karen next.
Thank you, Chair. I'll carry on with the rest of the report for the table of outstanding issues. The report covers two main elements: the updates against general items raised by the committee, and they're contained at Appendix A, and updates against the 2023 annual governance statement action plan contained at Appendix B. In terms of item 1, there are no significant issues to raise, and actions remain ongoing. And in terms of item 2, that sets out the latest annual governance statement published as part of the Council's statement of accounts for 22-23, which both the Chief Executive and Section 151 officer have discussed earlier with the external auditor. The next part is the continued delay of external audit. Obviously, we've just heard from Steve from BDO. The monitoring officer provided a Section 5 report that was considered by full council at its meeting on the 26th of September this year, detailing that delay in the government's response, and you yourself, Chair, raised relevant questions to that. There are also some changes to regulatory arrangements. The first is the government have established the Office for Local Government, OFLOG, which is a performance body for local government, which proposes a number of activities. The main aims being fostering accountability through increased transparency, and aims to support the improvement of local government performance. The strategic objectives essentially are to empower citizens with information about their local authority and increase local leaders and councils' understanding of the performance, and also to enhance central government's understanding of local government performance. The second is enhanced powers for the regulator of social housing. The Social Housing Regulation Act received royal assent earlier this year, which will see new regulations for the social housing sector. Again, key elements are enhanced powers, stronger enforcement powers, tenant empowerment, and standards for registered providers. Both of the above will have an impact on the council, and actions are required to establish a response to the above. In terms of the housing regulator powers, work's already underway with this council, and further planned work that will include external consultation and review, along with the development of any associated plans, and members will be provided updates as this work continues. And then I would just draw your attention to Appendix A and B, and happy to take any questions along with Richard from members, Chair. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Fairley.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, just a couple of questions, which are, so on Freeport East, could you expand on what internal audit will look at, and the aims for the meeting of the heads of audit across the country? Are you looking at, what are the emerging risks coming forward in relation to Freeport? That's one. And the other one relates to Jaywick Sands Sunspot, and I just wondered when that was scheduled to be done. Thank you.
Is that a part of the internal audit?
I think that might be part of my report.
Yeah. Yeah. No problem.
I can answer that now if you like, or we can come back.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So in terms of the work with Freeport East, I've been liaising with East Suffolk heads of audits and heads of audit across the country where Freeports are being developed in their areas, and part of it is just looking at what it is that we will be looking at, if anything. So at the moment it's mainly around governance and governance of the boards that are being put in place, because it's different in each area. So I think here we have our own board, which is a private entity, which and again, it's how is that set up? How do they make the decisions? Because there's still some public money going into it, how do we make sure that it's transparent and they're accountable, and just get an assurance from them that there is some kind of framework that they've got to, essentially rules they've got to abide by when they're conducting themselves as part of that board. I think that's really as far as we've got at the moment. There's no real, because it's still early, very early on in terms of what's going to happen. It's just looking at the governance of that really. And sorry, can you remind me of the other question? So we've recently completed our review of the JRIC Sand Sunspot, and it was a consultative piece of work. So it was around what lessons have we learned from that development, and we've provided the department with a report, essentially, just where we've asked those questions. I think examples would be having a fixed contract in a time of uncertainty. So at the time when we were building it, the materials, no one knew how much things were going to cost. Was that the right contract that we could have had? It's the questions that we asked. Can we learn from that? Is there something else we could have done? Cost escalation, is there a way, how do we monitor that a little bit better? Is there any, and we kind of just offer the mechanisms. Can we do these other things in future? Can we think about that? Because obviously we've got the levelling up projects, which are much larger, and the idea from that piece of work was just what have we learned from that, and can we try and make sure that we think about that in the future?
Come in there as well.
Brilliant, thank you.
I think again, as part of our wider governance arrangements, we do look for any significant investment to report back about the issues and the learning as well. So I'm looking across slightly to Lee, and we have discussed it, is that that won't be an audit committee report necessarily, because I think it's a report that part of our governance arrangements, that goes back to cabinet about these are major projects, what do we set out to do, did we achieve those, what was the budget position, what was the issues, and how have we resolved those. So that would be a report. I don't want to put you on the spot, Lee, but I think that's a report that between now and Christmas should find its way through to cabinet.
That's, yeah, so effectively that's the Sunspot. We've also got other capital projects that I've been responsible for, with the opportunity to draw the learnings of those, exactly as Craig was saying, ahead of taking forward the bigger capital projects under Levelling Up Fund. So certainly reviewing those and bringing them forward.
So in effect, that Craig's report will sort of blend into that one report, because it'll cover all of those, all the issues that Craig just raised. So that should be coming through shortly.
Yeah.
And just to add to the kind of what's coming down the pipeline. So on Sunday, as circulated to you, we've been awarded £20 million for the Towns Fund. We've also, we're a part, which was announced in the budget previously, 20 authorities for sharing out £400 million. Well, my math says that's another £20 million. We don't know what the second and third funding, the specifics of that, but that's £60 million plus the £6 million for Harwich. That's £66 million. That is a phenomenal amount of money to spend for any size of authority. And speaking to the authorities we were talking to last night, they thought our capital programme on what we were doing without the Levelling Up Fund was bigger than what they were doing. So they got £66 million on top of that. So the work which we do is as Richard says, it's kind of like there's going to be a number of pieces of work which are going to affect the way in which we advise members, that we cabinet, obviously, so the decision around some of the spend, but also there'll be scrutiny, and also yourselves from sort of some of the aspects. We do need to sort of work through not repeating and how we present that and how with that discussion. I do think at some stage there's having an all-member briefing, just discussing through the kind of the wider, so we're not having to pigeon ourselves our whole result. We're only talking about audit today, or we're only talking about scrutiny today, or we're only talking about cabinet today, but actually just being able to have a rounded discussion in person in a room, because once we put those together, and that'll probably be after Christmas, because the DLUC are coming to see us to talk about the Levelling Up Partnership in, I'm looking at I think it's January time, time. So once we've had that, and hopefully we'll have more clarity around the towns partnership at that stage, then government announced it on Sunday. I don't know why it was particularly beginning of this week. So.
Great. Councillor Platt.
Thank you, Chairman, and I agree, Ian. It's always good for a local authority to have an ambitious capital programme. It's one of the things that government looks to when they're looking for partners and places to work, and I think it's a great example here in tendering where that has actually come to fruition and then some. Thank you, Karen, for the update here. I think I would benefit of a bit more detail regarding offlog and the enhanced powers of the housing scenario, just to understand what it means for us here at tendering. What do our housing department, for example, how do they see this changing their work stream, what influence it might be having? So I think that'd be beneficial. Chairman, this is table of outstanding issues. I'm just curious as to where we explore outstanding issues from our previous meeting, because I've got a number of outstanding issues from our previous meeting which haven't been updated, and to which we were told that we would be provided with updates. So is that a moment now, or is that later on in your agenda, or where would that fit in?
Maybe Richard can help there.
Apologies if we've missed anything, I think is the honest answer. If we could, but that is the intention, is that if there's anything that's outstanding from the committee's asked, we want to capture it, because otherwise we lose it, don't we? And we'll I don't know, yeah, pragmatically, we need to pick those up. So if it's in the minutes and we missed a massive apology, we'll have a look, we'll take that away. But if there's anything that, anything specific, perhaps we'll have a conversation to add to it, because we need to. If it's outstanding, if it's a question that's outstanding, it's got to go on that table, because otherwise we lose sight of it, won't we? So yeah, so apologies if that's the case, but we can pick those up later on.
Yeah, I think things are always ongoing, right? So unless there's something specific.
Well, there were things that we were going to be informed about in the interim before our meeting in September. There were things specifically that we asked for updates that Craig, you told us that where it said improve requirement, you consider it to be a major issue. And we haven't heard back on that particular major issue. So yeah, it'd be really helpful to deal with that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Craig's got to do his bit.
Yeah.
Shall we? Yeah.
Sorry, I would have approached that in my report, if that's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. We do need to check that if there's anything missing, but a lot of stuff that comes from Craig's report is that where it falls, because there was a lot of But again, hopefully, if we can run through, because a lot of updates on a number of topics, and if we have anything missing, we'll make sure. So I'm not sort of suggesting 1 minute we've covered it and we've missed something off. We'll add it. We'll make sure we'll add it. But,
shall we go to Craig, and then I think we can incorporate perhaps all the other bits.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, Chairman. Have we finished with item A3 now? So I haven't seen anything moved and seconded yet.
Is everyone happy with the last report? And
so on page 57, it's basically the committee notes the progress against the actions set out in Appendix A and B.
Appendix A and B. Are we all happy with that? So Zoe first, I second. Thank you. Okay, so we now report of the internal audit manager, A1 report on internal audit, And hopefully we can incorporate the waste management, etc. in that with Councillor Bush here.
Thank you, Chairman. So, yeah, page 17 is the start of my report. But if I take you to page 21, which is the sort of progress of the internal audit progress. So, since the last committee, we've completed 5 audits, and we don't have any significant issues from those audits to report here today. But the 5 audits that were complete, you can see from page 25, which is the appendix with the audit plan. We've got corporate governance was one of those that we've completed, treasury management, contact center, digitalization, and JWIC stands. I'm trying to find the other one. Partnerships, health, external funding. So those are the 5 audits that we've completed in that period. Like I said, they all received a satisfactory level of assurance. So in terms of what the scope of our audit was and what we were looking at, there's no significant issues from those audits that we felt we need to report here today. We're now into what we call our key system season. So it's where all the financial audits will start from, well, as of September, they were starting, purely because that gives us enough transactions, enough work has been completed since April for us to give you assurance of how it's working in terms of our financial control. So all of those audits are in progress now. And I think that's in terms of work that we've done so far. That's the update I need to give. If I can take any questions on that at the moment.
Thank you, Chairman. Just if you, Chairman, would you excuse me? I need to go on something else. I've covered the item which I want to take part in. So if you don't mind,
Thank you, Ian.
So, Craig, when the quality assurance, it said 100% of responses received indicated that auditee was satisfied with the audit work undertaken. In such a thing as audit, when you achieve 100%, do you question yourself and the parameters of what you're doing?
So it's a difficult one. We're expected to ask every auditee, were you happy with the service you were given? And we, in terms of the whole time I've been here, I've not had any that says, hated everything you did, it was rubbish, didn't like that. So at the moment, so in terms of what we've received back, it's all been that the auditees were happy with the service they received. In terms of how you can take that, all we can do really is ask for that feedback, and then we get given that feedback, and then we present that to you. So yeah, so I'm reporting back to you what we need to report in terms of that. That's the best way that we can try and get that feedback. Is just asking them at the end, is there any things that we could have improved on? Were we late in reports? Was there enough detail in those reports? That sort of thing.
So, Craig, help me understand then. Is it a verbal feedback? Is it a questionnaire that they fill out? Is it multiple choice questions? You know, or is it a smiley face?
So they're all feedback forms at the end. So when an auditee receives their final report, I will then send out a feedback form at the end to say, were you happy with the auditor's work? Were there any issues during that audit? Please tell us what if there was anything. And there is a scale in terms of 5 and 1. What was the how do you feel in this scenario? And we haven't had any negative ones yet. So.
So can I then challenge and ask you to look at that system and see if there's any robustness that needs to be added to it that might provoke, something more? Because the world's not perfect, is it? So to get 100% continuously is is it the donuts? Back to, or is it something else? Just querying. That's fine. We can move on.
I mean, it may be the wording. 100% of what we've received. It's not so much that 100% in terms of everything we've done is perfect, but in terms of what we get back, because we don't always get responses back.
So that's my next question. And what percentage of returns do you get? Is this one return?
No. We do. Majority of people do return the responses, and so it's only every so often that we don't get many.
So could you embolden that for us then for next time, that it will say to us?
I can give you the exact numbers if you like.
Out of 500 forms we got.
Well, it will be within the number of audits we've completed. So within those 5 audits we've received, all the responses we received, none of them were negative. So I can give you the exact numbers. That's fine. It's not a problem.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Craig?
Move on to. So we've got our colleagues here with us today. So.
Sorry, apologies, Craig. I didn't know you were moving on to resourcing. That was the next item down on the page there. I just wanted to say that it looked like some good news there. You've got an apprentice. Did you want to tell us a little bit about that? Because that was one of the things that was outstanding from a previous meeting.
Yeah, that's fine. I was going to move on to try and bring our colleagues in, but that's fine. I can go through the resources quickly. So in terms of, yes, we've got an apprentice now. He's come from another department, was already working here, was very interested in working in audit. That's very rare, so I jumped on it. So as soon as he approached us, I tried to bring them in as soon as I could. It's working quite well in terms of it's giving us the admin support that we need within the team. Because it allows, and he's training at the moment, so I think he's been here for 6 weeks. He's taking it on quite well at the moment. So, but the idea is to just get him trained up on the systems, get him trained up on how we work, just to give us that additional support. And it's going well so far. The other part about the resourcing as well at the moment is our Assurance and Resilience Manager, Claire Lewis, is currently on secondment. So I am covering the fraud, risk, health and safety and compliance teams at the moment while she's on secondment until the end of December. And for me, there's so many synergies in what we do. So yes, my time is now going to be split a little bit, but in terms of how they all work, it's similar to audit, and we feed off each other. We've always worked very closely anyway. So it's a case of, while Claire's on secondment, they report to me at the moment, and so far we've not got any real issues. If that's to go on longer, then we will find a way of reporting back to the Audit Committee in terms of assurance on also compliance, health and safety, and those other roles like Claire would have done before. So, so it's just a bit of an update for you on that. Yeah. 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 So the next part of my report, at the previous committee, you asked for more detail around the significant issues. So we give you the number of outstanding issues, and you wanted a bit more context to that. So what we provided on appendix, page 29, you've now got all of those outstanding issues. And to give you a bit of context, you've got the findings, the agreed actions, service responses, and we've also got an audit update in there as well. So you know what our feelings are on the responses we've got, and if we're happy that the work's been done. We've got Damien, Tim, and Councillor Bush here today to give you a bit more of an update on some of those areas around housing repairs and on the recycling and waste issues that we talked about last. So I don't know if you want me to pass over in terms of providing that update.
That would be perfect.
Would you like me to lead on the Northbourne depot repairs and side of things? I think Councillor Fairley is the only councillor that was on the previous audit committee when this was brought up. So you'll be aware that there are a number of outstanding issues that hadn't been addressed. So you can see through this that the majority of these have now been addressed. The new software is implemented, we're using the new software, and actually the teams are now looking to explore to roll it out further within other services down at Northbourne Depot as well. We have a couple of outstanding issues on there that relate to the integration of two different bits of software, which, as ever, they always cause little niggles and problems. So currently, we're confident that we've given all the information that's required for that integration, and we're busy chasing one of the third-party contractors to make sure they do their section, and that's in relation to ensuring that we've tied up that tenant's information relating to the repairs as well. So we're removing all those little gaps that could cause problems or people not having the relevant information to make a decision. And the other one that's outstanding is just the completion of the bar scanning software in relation to stores. So we put other controls around it. We limited the people that have access to. So I'm confident that that's under control. I know that audit are happy with the work that we've done so far and will continue to monitor us on those things. As a slight aside, you probably ought to ask the services about Craig's returns rather than Craig, because we're the ones that provide those returns and we're the ones that will say whether we enjoyed the experience or not. But that's just as a slight aside. So as far as those goes, there's been quite a lot of activity going on in the background, not just my department, multiple departments, pushing to ensure that we've got that software installed and we're following all of the right protocols and we're doing things in a way that's manageable, monitoring, and us able to have information to see how we're managing those as well. So that's really the update. I don't suppose there's much point in going through each individual one because it's a general overall. I also didn't know if you wanted me to respond to your question about the regulatory side of things as well, because of the new regulatory powers coming from the 1st of April next year. So it might be an opportunity for me just to wax lyrical a little, just to give you a bit of an update of where we are. Is that okay? So the regulator, quite rightly, brought in by government to say that everybody who has a council house and any private rented through housing associations has the right to have a decent home. And some of the regulation that comes in, it takes us for a position where we were unregulated, and it now puts us effectively in the same bracket as a housing association. There are 22 consumer standards that are brought in. Those are various standards that we have to comply with as a housing provider. There are also tenant satisfaction measures, TSMs. There are 12 of those, and majority of those relate to repair and maintenance. 8 of those 12 sit in and around what we do with fire, gas, those sorts of things as well. So as a housing department, and that's spread over a large different area through homelessness, through to repairs, through to tenancy management, through allocations. We've been doing a lot of work in the background about identifying an improvement plan that takes us forward, identifying those areas that we need to improve to bring us up to that standard for that 1st of April target. That also includes improving our technology, improving how we capture data, improving how we report on that data, which sort of ties in with some of this as well. So this was a new piece of software to tidy up how we did work through our housing repairs team. The other software captures exactly that data around the housing, around what we're doing. Stock condition surveys have been ordered. When the stock condition surveys come in, they will then feed into our budgetary processes. So there's a lots of things that are interlinked with each other, no one thing in isolation. But in answer to your question, how does it affect us? It's a lot of work. We're blessed in many ways with a housing department that really want to help our tenants. They really are passionate about their jobs and about their delivery. So we do have a lot of work, and it's not a one-time piece of work, it's ongoing. It's about ensuring that we maintain those high standards, and we keep to maintaining those high standards. We've been assured by the regulator that the regulator will get round to every local authority to come and inspect us, to come and see the quality and the value of what we're doing. And so, that's what we're working towards. And as a department, we'll be looking to see how we provide support and guidance, how we can signpost people if they're struggling through fuel poverty, if they're struggling through other areas, how we push them off so they get that advice, and how we hopefully can look to maintain and keep people within their homes when we're looking at the homelessness side of things. So we're trying to shift our view from dealing with people that present to us as homeless to actually prevent them from becoming homeless in the first place. So there's a huge amount of work, and as Richard and the report says, we'll be coming back to you with a more formal report that outlines the work that we've been doing, outlines the work that we've still got to do, and outlines how we intend to keep that moving forward as we move on. The regulatory stuff is not a one shot in the pan 1st of April. It's our new world, it's where we're intending to move to, and how we improve our stock and how we improve how we deliver our service to our tenants. Is that helpful?
Councillor Fairley.
Thank you. Yes, that is very helpful, Damien. And it is good to hear about that sort of continuous improvement process, that it will always be, and it's never going to be a finished job. Yeah, I understand that. So no, yeah, thank you very much. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. I understand the housing allocation software is working well now as well.
So yes, that's as automated as we can make it, but it's compliant. Audit are happy with what we're doing, and the team are pleased that we've got to that position as well, so that it removes any of the risk that was previously identified as well.
Thanks, Damien. So, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Damien. Going back to Northbourne, it mentions in here about a new system estimated November. Is it still on track for November, or is it installed?
I've been told it's on track for November. You wouldn't be surprised to discover I have regular conversations with people.
Thank you very much. Given the fact that this is a very small committee, and some of us are new to the authority, would you welcome a visit from this committee to Northbourne just to explore once you've got everything in place?
Absolutely. Well, we're really pleased with the changes that we've had at Northbourne. I'd absolutely welcome you to come down, not just physically, not just how it looks, but in attitude and also in the way in which we're looking to deliver things. So yeah, more than welcome.
I think it'd be very good for our staff that work there to see an interest that we as members take in the work that they do, and how we want them to have the latest technology to enable them to get on and do that work. So yeah, thank you very much.
Good idea. Right, next was the recycling.
Yes, the green waste, what we talked about previously. So I think Tim is here to give you a bit of an update on progress with that.
Thank you. Yeah, so members will recall that we provided a sort of briefing note in August to provide some sort of background to the issue. And what I'm going to do today is really give you some update on where we are in relation to that. I'll move a bit closer. Does that help? Yeah. I'll carry on. If you still can't hear, then let me know. So what we've set out in this report from August was some sort of immediate short-term actions, and then some longer-term actions. Also working at the moment on the short-term ones, and we were going to initially write to all customers that hadn't paid invoices and ask them to kind of pay or let us know what the position is. But what we decided to do actually was get some data from Veolia. So we always were going to ask Veolia to do an audit of customers, but they're doing that at the moment. In fact, it's complete. We're just waiting for them to collate the data into a spreadsheet. So basically, they've taken the list of customers that haven't paid invoices. The crews have gone out, they've noted down whether those customers are presenting a bin for collection or not. So we've got that data. And initial reports are that, yeah, there are some customers that are putting their bins out, a good proportion of those people. So the next stage is to get that data, properly analyse it. And they are Aggresso customers. So we need to overlay that with whether those people have switched over and now a firm steps customer. That's a bit of kind of data analysis work we need to do. And then once we're absolutely certain as to what the position is, we will then write to those people and invite them to pay. And there's a little bit of a process there, because obviously if they don't pay, we need to follow up. So that will then be a case of going to collect the bin from them on a collection day. So if they put it out for collection, we'll empty it and it'll go into a different vehicle and be taken away. And then as an authority, we'll take a view on how far we want to go in terms of pushing those people to pay those invoices. And obviously we'll get some advice around that. But essentially we've got some people who haven't paid over 3 or 4 years. So we need to work out how far we go back and push that. So that's kind of where we are. And I think in terms of time frame, obviously we do all this sort of immediate short-term stuff by the end of October. It might be slightly longer than that, because I think the letter needs to be fairly well crafted. So we'll be sort of sending that out, I would say, sort of mid-November, late November, and then there'll be this sort of follow-up process with Viola there. So we're getting a handle on it, certainly much better handle on it than we had previously.
Thank you. Councillor Bush, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just add some comments. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Tim, for that. Yeah, when this emerged, it was a bit of an issue, or is an issue. But when you look back, I mean, it's been a successful business, the brown bins. We've excelled 17,000 customers, and I think it's a bit like the teething problems, and particularly there's two different administrative systems that perhaps conflicted. But since we've sat down and looked at this, there's been the officers working with the contractors have been focused to consolidate the two systems to identify. It is a complex situation because the two different systems that some were carried over on both, and so there's some duplication potentially, and some have to be very careful and considerate from our position that we ensure that those that are billing are bona fide people that haven't paid, that we are going to challenge and recover that money. But I'm very confident now, having followed this through in the last month or two, is that we can see the closing out now of this system to get it under an encapsulated way. And I'm very comfortable with the contractors working with the officers now to tick this off, and a process of sort of eliminating these gaps to close it out. And that's really the comments I want to make on that. We'll be focused on this until we get it completely concluded. Okay.
Thank you. If I could ask around sort of risk to reputation in terms of people being asked for backdated money, what plans are there in place to manage that?
I think, yeah, this comes down to how we craft the letter and how we go about the whole process. So I think there is a risk, obviously, because we're then sort of highlighting sort of public domain, really, that there's more of an issue than people maybe realise. So we'll have some discussions through management team and obviously get legal advice and things around how we manage that. And there'll be discussion with Will as well, our communications manager. And then there's going to have to be a process for customers when they receive those letters. They're going to be phoning in, so it's going to be like a flow chart for people answering calls as to how they kind of manage that kind of discussion. And obviously some people will be saying, well, I've never put my bin out, and we've got evidence that they have, and there might be some people saying that genuinely, so there's going to be a bit of a process of working through that. But absolutely, you're right, there is a risk to the authority's reputation that we need to be cognizant of as we work through this process.
Councillor Steady.
So hopefully it will be resolved, the outstanding issue. And I know I've spoken with you about the future, and obviously the main problem seems to be the size of the lorries. And I know you intimated that obviously there might be new negotiations. So can you sort of shed a bit of light on that? Can we offer it to more people? Because that seemed to be the problem. Someone was already on the system, and somebody wanted to enrol, but they were refused. I think a lot of it was down to the capacity. So has any sort of anything changed on that?
Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor said you're referring to a specific issue in Brightlingsea where
And it was an issue across the whole of tendering. You know, the size of the vehicles
yeah, I think
affect everywhere.
the only issue I'm aware of is Brightlingsea and other areas where there are difficulties in getting vehicles up certain roads. So because of historic issues, we're not offering customers the service currently. But yeah, going forward with a new contract, we'll see if there's a way of delivering a service to those people using, as you say, a smaller vehicle. But that's slightly separate to this, I think, this issue that we're looking at here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you, Councillor Bush. Good to have you with us here today. How many garden waste recycling bins do we have out in tendering? You said 17,000, but I'm not sure I got that right.
Yeah, so we're just over 18,000 now in terms of customers.
So there's 18,000 bins that are out there. Okay, and what percentage of bins do you think are not being paid for?
So the unpaid invoice list is sitting at around 2,000.
So you got,
but that's not customers. So you distill that down, you're looking at about 800,000 customers.
So around about 800 bins. Yeah. So there's 800 bins. And how are you going to identify? I mean, you've got Veolia, you've said, I believe, going out doing an audit on those bins. There's got to be a system. Well, there's got to be an issue potentially there with people not necessarily putting their bin out.
That's a good point. It is difficult to, so the data we're getting back, we should have that data by the end of this week, is based on one kind of round, one go of kind of seeing if people are putting the bin out. So we'll base our letters and our response on that. There's going to have to be another audit in future. So we'll get this first round out of the way and then we'll go out again, because as you say, it's just based on the one snapshot in time. The customer might not put the bin out that week, but they might do the next time. So it's difficult challenge.
And then so you've got Veolia doing the first audit, and then you're doing a second audit after that. Did I get that correct?
So well, Veolia will do that again. That's that process they've just done. They will do that again, maybe in a few months' time.
So Veolia keep on auditing, and they'll pick up, you hope, the anomalies.
Yes,
as they go through.
Yeah.
And how are they doing that?
Well, that's the crews. So the driver of the vehicle, he's got the list of people who we believe haven't paid. He's using that. Is the bin out there? Tick. And so it's quite crude, really. Is the bin out? Yes or no?
So each address he's stopping at.
Yes.
He is okay. And is there any additional cost to the council for Veolia doing that?
No.
They're doing that off their own back.
Yeah.
Potentially slowing down their process.
Yeah, I don't think it's slowing too much because it's just kind of as they're going along. So there might be a little bit of extra time, but it's not a major impact.
Okay. Very pleased to hear what you said about the drafting of any correspondence and the lengths that you were going to go to try and make sure we get the message right there. I wouldn't want us to be wielding a big stick if somebody's made a genuine mistake, or perhaps even somebody has moved to a property and there was an existing bin there and they've just seen it as business as usual. Are you looking to circulate that at all? Would that be something that you'd bring back to us here at this committee, or is that just an internal part? Obviously, Mike would be part of that, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I think we wouldn't necessarily plan to bring the letter back to this committee, but it will be circulated and considered by the council's management team will seek legal advice on it. Obviously, Will, comms manager, his advice. And obviously, Mike will see it as well for it goes. So.
Thank you. And then what measures are you be putting in place to make sure that this doesn't happen again? I mean, obviously, you've got the new system, but you've got problems there with one system to the, what are you going to have an annual audit going forward about people moving properties or whatever? What's your plans going forward so that we're not back here in 2 years' time?
So I think we've got a number of things in place. We've got a garden waste officer, dedicated post now to work on the whole kind of garden waste project, and there'll be greater kind of oversight of the data we're sending over to Veolia when customers don't renew. and follow up in respect of that. And then, yeah, there's going to have to be some sort of ongoing kind of audit kind of process to make sure that we don't end up here again.
Do you think there'd be any physical marking on the bin or anything like that? Is that in your plans?
Well,
so that you can identify, so it's easily identifiable there on, something like that.
We've talked about that, and that works very well where you've got everyone renewing on the same date each year, because the 1st of April you can go around and new sticker goes on. But when you've got people renewing at literally any point during the year, it's more difficult. So it's something we're going to explore, but we're not necessarily sure it's going to be that effective. The best option for us is the in-cab technology that Veolia are going to bring on stream. So they've got that in the vehicles that do the ordinary waste and recycling rounds at the moment. We don't yet have it for garden waste. So that's what we're working towards. So our systems here will interface with their system, and the cab will then say, this is a live customer, only collect from that address. So that's kind of the ultimate solution to this kind of problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming here today.
I think Councillor Fairley's got a question.
Thank you. Just one thought as it's been spoken about, and hopefully you'll be able to say there is a working party for waste and recycling happening. It's very much sort of service related, I know. Obviously there is a crossover with audit. Are the audit aspects looked at by the working party as the service aspects, and if they're not, could they be?
You can't comment on it. Yeah, well, the working party has just been formed. We've had one meeting. We've got a waste board now that's looking at the bigger picture. It would certainly be in service process, and audit would certainly be part of that. So, a very good point. I just want to go back really on what Councillor Pat said about the mechanics of the administration, how complex it is to close out that loop and be active and current. And that'd be a part of what we're looking at. I'm very focused about systems and monitoring and targeting myself. When we implement this, and it's going to be an ongoing system that's going to have to become refined, because what we often forget is people will sign up for the brown bin could move mid-contract. So what do we do? We take the bin, let's go. So there's lots of things. We're going to have all these different sort of scenarios and strategies in there so we can make certain that we are accurate in what we're invoicing and all of that. And that is something that the officers are working with, and I'll certainly be part of that, and dealing with Veolia, that we have a system that's robust. But I will go back to what we said, when you've got an operation that has now become so in demand with the amount of people wanting at such pace, there is going to be problems. And it's as soon as we can iron those problems out, and we're well on the road to doing that, and I'm confident about that. But it's very important as well what Councillor Fairley said about the letters, how careful and considerate we deal with that. It could be that a particular resident's changed from one system user to another, and because he hasn't paid there, he's paid on the new system. So it's all these things that we are looking at behind the scenes, believe us, to make certain we're auditing this in an appropriate way long term to make it as robust as we possibly can. Thank you.
Councillor Steady.
Thanks. So just going back to the technology then, you're saying how you're trying to audit everything. I'm very aware that a lot of the lorries haven't got GPS. Has that come across? So, for instance, they might not necessarily know, apart from a list, where all of the bins are. So, is that have you been looking at that to try and link up?
So the in-cab technology does include GPS trackers for the vehicles. So once we've got that on the main waste and recycling refuse collection vehicles, then obviously that will come at some stage on the garden waste. So yes, yeah. That's part of the in-cab technology. So the vehicle knows where it is and who's being collected from. So.
Only personal experience, that seems to be failing on some of the lorries. They just come around with a list, a hard list.
So is that what you mean for the garden? Is that for the garden waste?
Bit of everything, I think.
Yeah. So for the garden waste at the moment, that is the case, but we're working towards in-cab technology. Yes. Yeah.
Any further questions? No? That's brilliant. Thank you both. Craig?
So the last part of my report is the internal audit charter. So we bring this to you once a year, and it essentially sets out roles and responsibilities, the mission statement of internal audit, sort of defines the roles, the requirements of internal audit, compliance with public sector internal audit standards, and how we remain independent as an internal audit team from all the other services, reporting lines, relationships. So it essentially sets out everything that we do, really. And as part of this audit standards, we need the audit committee to approve that and agree that every year. So I'm bringing it back to you again. There's no changes from previous year because we haven't had any changes to standards at the moment. There are some changes coming through in the global internal audit standards, but we don't know how that's going to impact local government yet. So so there's no changes from our part. So it's just to ask you to approve and agree going forwards.
Thank you. Yeah, just one comment, and it links with Karen's report as well, actually, in terms of the committee's role in relation to audit, and that was just that the LGA training modules are really very good. I did an audit training module on LGA, and I know we have our all member briefings and things in our training there, but yeah, just bear in mind, LGA does it too. It's good.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Craig. So you've mentioned there's no changes, Craig. Are there any changes you'd like to make to it? Are you content with it?
I am, to be honest. It was my grueling task of putting this together and going through. As I've said before, we've got 300 odd standards that we have to abide by, and I've seen a lot bigger charters out there, and I've tried to sort of have a bespoke charter for this organisation, and it's worked so far. At the moment, I'm not looking to make any changes, but I think when the standards do change, we definitely need to consider it, because we don't know what the governing bodies might want to or expect us to do going forwards. Like any other sort of regulatory organisation or department, there's always more that we can do, but it kind of fits with the resources we have at the moment. So I'm not looking to make any changes as at the moment.
I didn't want us to agree to anything that you weren't content with. Do you have the option of in-year changes should some kind of regulation change?
Yes, yeah, we can change it in year, and I would, if we really needed to, I would bring it back to the committee and explain exactly what that change is and why we have to do it.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe, is it 2024, the next review? Is that something I read?
Well, that's when I'm expecting to possibly have to make some changes based on sort of the standards and how they sort of then filter down. Because the standards that we abide by, they're for banks, they're for insurance company. It kind of goes across the board. So it's then how you then make it fit with local government, and that's what we're waiting for, really.
Are we all happy with the charter? Yeah. And we're happy with the reports. Thank you. Excellent. I think we can move on now to a report of the Corporate Director, Place and Economy, A2, Progress on Climate Action, pages 41 to 56.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll just say a few words to the report. The report's obviously in your packs, and then happy to take questions, and obviously with Councillor Bush as well. It's a 2-year progress report as requested. The actions are set out in the annex, and it's a report on this document, the November 2020 action plan that sets out our goals to be net zero by 2030, and it covers what are called in this world scopes 1, 2 and 3 emissions, which I'm sure you're aware of, but I shall just briefly note that scope 1 is what's internal to the council, scope 2 is electricity, and scope 3 is what is in our supply chain and more widely in the community. And as the report notes, we have reduced our scopes 1 and 2 emissions by 522 tonnes of carbon from the baseline to 21-22, which is the most recent data we have. We are currently engaging with consultants on converting our energy data for the most recent completed year into carbon emissions. And I think what you also see in the annex in terms of the impact is obviously the impact of the pandemic. You know, when you do a lot less services during the pandemic, when things are closed, carbon reduces and then it kind of comes back up again, but not to the levels of the baseline as we've come out of the pandemic. And I won't read out, you'll be pleased to hear the entire annex, but just to highlight a few of the actions. You know, the energy audits are complete, so we know what needs to be done on the buildings. The Sunspot Centre you launched recently, and we were really pleased that that had an EPC A rating. And if you've seen the building, you can see it's a really modern facility that's got all those kind of carbon built into it, carbon reduction built into it. Wheelie, that's closed. That had the oil-fired heating system as well as being obviously a 1930s building. We've got 2 electric vehicles. We've got 8 EV charging points, which are all well placed, which is on the Starling site have just recently been available. We've got LED lights in the Prince's Theatre. You can imagine what those kind of spotlights kind of put out in terms of electricity. Air handling units at the Clacton Leisure Centre. We've run climate training for all staff. We had a great session in this room with Professor Jules Pretty for all the cabinet, all the members invited for the council. And you'll also see there was a slightly logical sort of regression where the bit in the report that talks about is this relevant to climate change says yes it is, and the reason that this section is in the report is as a result of this action plan. So every kind of report we now have, including the one you've got before you, has to consider our 2030 target. And the next step is to produce a new action plan because the current action plan comes to an end this year, and for 2024 we're producing the next stage. So yeah, that's just to outline the report that's before you, Madam Chairman, and to take questions on it from myself or Councillor.
Thanks, Lee. Yeah, I think one big question might stand out is this achievable by 2030 given our resources?
I think it's a really good question, and in the report it says, you know, there's a high risk of us not achieving it. I mean, we're just being open and frank about that. It's in terms of the amount of our total kind of carbon emissions, they were for scopes 1 and 2, which is what falls within the 2030 ambition. It isn't scope 3 that's in that ambition. There were 2,797 in 2018-19 tonnes of carbon, and 21-22 it was 2,245. So although you've taken out 500 tonnes of carbon, you know, I wouldn't pretend that there isn't a substantial amount to remain. However, you know, there is an argument for keeping the ambition because it does drive the work of the council. It gives us a focus. It maintains the importance of it, and we recognise that to make progress, external funding would substantially be needed to make this work. And obviously, if we don't know how government policy is going to change between now and 2030, obviously there's been recent announcements that we'll have heard in the press about on some policy matters in relation to the environment, but one doesn't know what's going to happen over that period, and it's possible that within that period there's a substantial investment in reducing carbon that would enable us to meet that ambition. So yeah, it remains a substantial risk. We recognise the financial imperative, and we seek to deliver it within that. And I think the final thing I'd say about the financial side of it is actually some of the revenue costs that sit within the authority are absolutely as a result of energy. And the more that we can do to reduce our energy costs does help our financial position. And so there is actually a congruence between our climate ambitions and our financial ambitions around the energy piece. But I wouldn't pretend that becoming net zero by 2030 is cost free at all. And the original report said it wasn't, and so on. But there are elements where the two sit together.
Councillor Fairley.
Thank you, Lee. Just so on targets, did you have a view as to what any reduction might be, or is it just we'll see what it is? Did you, not a target as such, a soft target, but did you have a view of what you might achieve in terms of a reduction in Scope 1 and Scope 2 for a year? And then my next question, I guess, is, I don't know, when you look at Craig's work, for example, so let's say you're looking at like pool covers and things here. How does that then link in with perhaps internal audit work and field work? And does the action plan link in then with anybody else's sort of work? How does it link in, for example, with internal audit?
Of the action plan, there is what one might call a soft trajectory. I like the word that you used there, Councillor Fairley. And actually that would suggest that by 2022, which is the data that we have here, that you would have made more progress than we have. So I can get that data and send it to you. We're not far off. Actually, we're not far off. It suggests weirdly, it suggests about 245, which is where we were in 21-22. So if you move it on to this year, we have to have made a similar amount of kind of improvement, and that needs to continue to accelerate. And what you see in that trajectory, apologies, it's not here, but I can share it when it's in the plan, and I can share it with you, is that a lot of the savings in carbon come from electricity. And a lot of that isn't things that the council needs to do. So in terms of our, and again, it's in the report, in terms of our reductions in emissions, 144 tonnes have come from what we've done, 376 tonnes have come from electricity. Now we buy zero carbon electricity, but actually the renewables going into the grid reduces the amount of carbon that's embedded in that electricity that we buy. So we're going to make a lot of progress sort of just naturally by national policy, and then we have to make some progress by ourselves. So yeah, we're not doing too badly in terms of making that progress, but we would need to continue to do so. And the other point is within financial resources, Councillor Sudra, as you've said, is the question will come towards 2020, what does the council wish to do in terms of offsetting? Because if there's ultimately in the original plan, there's always the requirement for offsetting. There's not an expectation in the trajectory that we would get to zero carbon. We get to net zero carbon by offsetting, and so that is a question that we'd have to look to the future, and that would again need to be within financial resources.
And how does that then link it? So how does the action plan link in with other people's work and plans? Yeah.
I think the point is this topic is and I look at that and I just want to remind Audit Committee and everyone. climate change, and it is changing. We're seeing government, political, global changes all the time. And what we created then has moved on quite a bit, as we've seen now, when there's so many other targets that are being moved to 235 and 250. As Lee Healy said, we're working on what was set before us then. We are currently building a new action plan for 24 to 27. And there's a lot that we need to take on to consider along that route for auditing, monitoring, targeting our own estate, where we're going, what we're being driven, what we financially. But what I would say, what we inherited as this administration, there were some really good points with the pool covers, the LED lighting, and some of those have been approved and are being actioned to deliver some of this carbon reduction along the way, which is very, very important. And as Lee Healy said, the development, the sunspot, again, it's got A category, so we're doing the right things. In planning policy, under PPL 10, I think it is, we've got a lot of information and a lot of processes in there to ensure that the development, even though it's influential in the development for building fabric first, low energy housing, and that is all part of all of what we're looking at. And if we just look at some of those subjects, transport, as Lee said, electric vehicles, this will be a very key part, not just with our own estate, when we're looking at waste and the new contract that we're looking to procure by 2026, how we build that, how we work with the consultants that we're engaging with to give us the best value for money, not just for money, but we're under cost pressures, but to make sure that we are addressing carbon reduction in the most effective, efficient way. So that is certain elements there. When we look at the corporate aspects, I mean, monitoring target, as Lee Healy said, we're waiting for the last current year data from ABSI on what final carbon reduction is where we're en route. So obviously that will feed in to producing this plan for 24 and 27. And there are the comments initially, I could probably talk all day about energy and carbon reduction because they just live with it. So, and I mean, it's very passionate for this council. Everywhere we look, it's not just about carbon reduction, it is about cost saving. And whatever we do, we invest to save. And we have to make certain these paybacks meet that we can afford to do it. And with continual savings, we can reinvest in other areas to save an energy. So there's a lot of work to be done. Very excited about it. We've got a great team that are working on that climate board. So, I mean, it's watch this space, and I'm quite happy to answer any questions about anything about this. Thank you.
Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Steady.
This is just a off the wall, really. I know the Levelling Up Fund is mentioned in the housing development. Do you foresee any monies being made available for different policies from the Levelling Up Fund to actually fund some of this?
So the opportunity, so in the action plan, it states that the importance of new buildings that the council brings forward being supportive of this agenda, exactly as we talked about in relation to Sunspot. So in relation to the Levelling Up Fund, that's going to be investing in capital, that's going to be investing in new buildings. So that brings forward the opportunity to make sure that those buildings are as energy efficient as possible, and therefore support us, our estate being, or at least the new bit of the estate that's built under the Levelling Up Fund, meeting this ambition for carbon net zero.
So yes, then there is finance going to come from the Levelling Up Fund for investment from the action plan.
Yeah. Yes.
So the next question is something which I have asked before. Then is, in terms of the budgets, then is there any money already committed in that budget which will be taken by funding, or which will be superseded by the funding from the Levelling Up Fund?
No, the bit of the action plan that the Levelling Up Fund relates to is developing new buildings that sort of help to meet this ambition. The money that comes in for the Levelling Up Fund will pay for those buildings. It doesn't release other money. It's new buildings we wouldn't have built without that money. And if I might just build on exactly what Councillor Bush was saying, mentioned about the internal governance with the board, that is the opportunity to answer Councillor Fairley's question about bringing together different parts of the council putting them into one place and being able to say, what is it that your kind of mainstream work is, and how is that going to help deliver this agenda, so that we're not sort of doing a whole set of separate work over here, but that actually we're just talking to colleagues around the council and saying, you're in charge of assets and working on assets, waste recontracting, etc. How is that embedded in the mainstream way, opposed to being an ad?
Good.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Councillor Bush. The energy audit of all council-owned buildings with a carbon reduction plan for each one. That's on top of page 47. That's all council buildings. That's like all council buildings, or is it main key council buildings? I'm just thinking about buildings at recreational centres, changing rooms, for example, and those kind of. Are we putting that into that bracket? Is it all buildings?
Councillor Platt, I can give you. I can sort of give the committee the list of the buildings that exactly includes, which I don't have the hand in front of me. My understanding, it is certainly the main council buildings, so I've had conversations about them. Whether it includes every single toilet block and every single,
sure.
I couldn't say, but I can give you the list of the committee of what they are.
Thank you very much, because when we've got to be careful the language we use, and when it says all council-owned buildings, somebody picks a hole in that. They could quite easily say, well, what about that one down there, etc., etc. So that's great. On the energy efficiency, really pleased to hear about that. We're so energy efficient this morning that we can't even charge our mobile phones here, which is rather interesting. But we do have lights on in rooms which aren't being used. So are we exploring those kind of technical possibilities where we've got sensors that turn things on and off? So that we can actually then say that we're being as efficient as we possibly can. Thank you.
I will pass over to my esteemed colleague.
In answer to your question, certainly of all of our main office blocks, yes, we took that opportunity during the transformation work. And you'll notice in very few rooms when you walk around, we actually removed the light switches as well, so that people don't have the option to leave a light on. It's timed. You may see a light on, but over a period of time, they'll turn themselves off. And this is probably one of the few rooms and the ancillary room that has light switches. Most of the offices have all been removed. And it's quite an interesting thing, because you can walk through some of the large office open plan areas and it lights in front of you. It makes you feel quite good about yourself. Like, exactly, yeah. So yes, we took that on board a couple of years ago.
I'm mindful. Did Karen get to tell you about offlog, etc.? Because I think we had Ian in between, didn't we?
If I recall, we asked for, as a committee, I think, I certainly asked for a bit more detail on those two items that were on that agenda. So one being offlog, the other one was the housing position as something that would come to us.
I think, Chairman, that Richard and Craig will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're intending to produce more detail as it comes forward and a report probably to the next meeting of the committee, if it's moved on sufficiently.
Yes, that's absolutely fine. I think that concludes our meeting today then. Date of the next scheduled meeting.
Sorry to be a stickler, Chairman. Can I just have a vote on the recommendations on page 42? Thank you, Chairman. I have to raise these things, otherwise I fail my audit.
Yes, are we all happy with that? Yep, happy. Thank you. Okay, next scheduled meeting of the Audit Committee is to be held in the committee room, Town Hall Station Road, Clacton-on-Sea, at 10:30 on Thursday, the 25th of January 2024. Thank you all.
Hang on, sorry, Richard. Is the meeting finished, or was this in the meeting? Yeah, you declared the meeting closed? Yes, thank you.